Good morning, traders. It's Wednesday, March the 4th. Taking a look at the charts, we got the SP 500 daily chart, and last couple sessions been pretty wild. Yesterday, the markets had a huge gain in the morning and then reversed to close down near the lows of the session. Huge percentage swings, up a couple percent, down a few percent. Today, we're seeing the market back up another 2.5% this morning. So it's chopping around, which is what usually happens after a big market crash. So we had a crash over here. And then, of course, after that, we saw the market recover and chop around sideways for several weeks. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if that same thing happens. The question is, does it trade in this range or does it trade in a much larger range up into this area? Overall, I would expect we're going to see some pretty wild price action going forward for several weeks. And we'll see how bonds perform. Again, yesterday we talked about this, that we're expecting the market to chop around in some big range. And during that time, bonds should continue to move higher. Now, with that said, let's take a look over at bonds. The rates were cut yesterday. Bonds had a big pop. Metals and also had a big pop. Overall, we're looking for bonds. The type of price action we're starting to get now is very close to the end, I think, of this bond move. It feels as though we're somewhere kind of in this kind of realm where the market's having this exhaustion move. It might come up, poke a little bit higher. Overall, we're looking for bonds to go just a little bit higher. If we take a look at TLT, we've got our upside target here at 160.27, so not too far from the high that was put in yesterday. Overall, we'll hopefully see the market push up a little bit higher. If we get near yesterday's highs, we might just pull the plug on bonds, close it out. That'll be a 15% gain. You know, all the signs are there that we're getting into a topping phase. Typically, when you see this type of volume, this type of volatility, and news comes out that's really bullish for bonds or metals, it's usually a short-term top in the market, and we could see some type of potential pullback, potentially a multi-month consolidation. So we've seen this run up, we're close to those targets, and it'll be time for the market to do its thing and recalibrate it and take a breather before it has another run either to the upside or start to break down to the downside. Now let's take a look over at metals. Gold up 0.25% this morning, not too much, but yesterday obviously rates having a big pop there and causing a big pop. We saw the US dollar pull back as well, which helped fuel the fire for precious metals, but gold negating this more or less as margin call day. It's popped up and came right back to that area. Typically something that goes straight down will come straight back up. Same thing to the upside. Something that goes straight up will usually come straight back down when you get into this type of price action, and that's why we're expecting chop across the board for a lot of markets here. If we look over at silver, it's relatively flat on the session. And it's underperforming, still under these lows over here and really struggling to get some traction. And if we look at gold miners like GDXJ, same type of thing. It has had a nice bounce up and it's still underperforming. It's still stuck under these resistance areas. It's just not fully recovered like gold would be equivalent to the miners being up to this area. But they're underperforming, which they've been doing more so than not over the last several months. If we take a look over at energies, natural gas up 0.75%, having a bounce here from an oversold territory, and hopefully it's going to start to carve out a bottom here and eventually maybe get us a new buy signal for a move back up to this 250 or 255 area. Looking at crude, up 1.6% this morning. It came all the way down, hit our 44 target that we had talked about up actually during this reversal point. We hit that 44 target. Now it's bouncing off that level, and we'll see how things consolidate here. Could chop around for a while, could move back up to this moving average, which would be through the heart of this consolidation as well. And it could continue to move lower. Overall, still in a downtrend, and at this point having a bounce, an oversold bounce, and also a bounce off support. So it's having a fairly strong bounce, but still in a downtrend. We're going to be looking for some new trade setups over the next few sessions as the market tries to settle itself out. We'll see where the next trade setups are. The next play could be closing out our TLT and moving to cash, and at that point we'll let the market digest these recent the market crash and this volatility, and we should eventually get into some type of new trade. If we look over at the trend analysis chart here for the SP 500, let me pull that over here. Get into the trend analysis. Overall, we're going down into a downtrend, and we're going to eventually have probably a new uptrend. Looking back on the charts to earlier or last year, you can see the market reversed. We get this sideways chop that I showed you on the daily chart. This is the 30-minute version. The market goes red, trades sideways for a while. Eventually, we get into a new buy signal. And during this chop and this sell-off is when we were long bonds, and bonds continued to move up while the market traded sideways. And then we get long equities and out of bonds, and then we get long bonds. And so we're just going to be continuing to oscillate. So overall, right now we are in this early stage, more or less this first bounce of a market. We're probably going to see it continue to chop around for a while. Eventually that momentum will stall out, that downward momentum. We'll eventually see it probably resolve to the upside, and we'll have a new long signal to get long equities. So that's where we are in terms of the price action here. If we just zoom in and look at the price, you can see we've got this downtrend, and now it'll probably chop around here and eventually start to turn up. So we'll see how things go over the next few sessions, and we'll be looking to get some new positions in. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.